Hi everyone, Ashley here and welcome to another video on the Penguin Palace Stamps YouTube channel. Today I have a fun slider card to share with you featuring stamps from one of their new Spring 2020 stamp sets called My BFF. So without further ado, let's get into it. I'm starting with coloring here, and I have to apologize. I actually did film stamping out all of these images and coloring a few of them like the tree and the clouds, but I lost the footage somehow. I don't know what happened. So it's no big deal, it's not much that was missed. I just stamped them using my typical stamping technique. If you watch any of my other videos, you'll see the same thing. I just put my piece of white paper in my mini Misty and stamped them out with black ink, and I used a Copic friendly black ink so I can color in the images with my Copic markers, as you can see here. I've sped up the video and I'm going to just keep it a little bit sped up as I get through all of the coloring. And I'm going to play some music here while I continue to color these images, and I will keep telling you about the rest of the card after the coloring is done. Okay, so after I colored in all of the images, I realized that I wanted to have these two hugging cats actually stamped out separately. So you'll see that as a stamp, they come kind of together like they're hugging, but I wanted to have one at a time, and you can kind of see why in the final design of the card. I wanted to have one kind of pushing the wagon one way and one pushing the wagon the other way. So I knew I needed to stamp the cats separately. So what I did here, and what you can see that I'm doing now, is I just took a little piece of purple tape, and just any kind of masking tape, or really any tape will do, and just used it to cover up one of the cats. And then I can ink up the cat that is left exposed while the other one is covered by the masking tape. Then when I'm done inking, I can pull off the masking tape, and then I can stamp out the one cat that got inked up. And you can see there you get that nice one cat stamped out perfectly. And there was like a couple little sections that I had covered up with tape a little bit too much, but that's easy to fix. You can just take a black marker and fix it up afterwards. So once all of the images were stamped and colored, I went ahead and used the coordinating dies that are sold separately but that coordinate perfectly with this set to cut out all of the images, and I kept them on hand. Now I'm going on to working on the background of this card, and I'm just making a few different pieces here that I'm going to use to create the whole scene. I started by cutting out a piece of white cardstock with the largest Dots Meet Stashes rectangle die from Penguin Palace Stamps. This is another one of their dies from their latest Spring 2020 release, and it's an amazing set of rectangles that have this beautiful stitching pattern along the edge, a dots and a dashes combination. Once I had that, I knew I wanted the background to have a cloud pattern, so I'm just using a cloud stencil with my Distress Oxide inks, and I'm using a couple different shades of pink here. I'm just mixing in some picked raspberry with some spun sugar, with spun sugar being that lighter pink. So I've just got my little foams on ink blending tools here and kind of going back and forth between the two pinks and just getting that cloud pattern throughout the entire sky. And kind of mixing the two colors a little bit together so that you get a bit of dimension, with some areas having more of the darker picked raspberry and some areas having more of the lighter spun sugar. So I just did that up the entire panel. I left a bit of space at the bottom because I knew that there was going to be a grassy layer there, so I didn't need to go all the way down. Off camera, I also used that Dots Meet Stashes rectangle die to cut out a couple more pieces of paper, and then I cut them down with a hillside border die, so that I have two pieces of hillside kind of going in opposite directions from each other. I then took a grassy stencil and two different colors of green Distress Oxide ink. This is Lucky Clover, which is the darker color, and then Twisted Citron is the lighter color. I'm doing the same technique here where I just go up the panel using my stencil and kind of mixing the two different colors together, blending back and forth between the dark and the light. So kind of having different patches of light and different patches of dark throughout the whole panel. And I just wanted this to look like layers of differently colored grass, and I think that really adds in a lot of nice dimension. So as I blend the ink over the stencil, I just keep moving it up a little bit more and doing it over and over again until the whole panel is covered with ink. And I really love doing this technique because I just think it adds a really cool level of detail. At the end I noticed that the bottom wasn't quite as dark as I was wanting it to be, so I just went back in with another layer of that Lucky Clover and just kind of blended it again to darken it up a little. So now I'm just doing the exact same thing on this piece. This is sort of the front hillside piece. Again, I just cut a piece of white paper out of a Dots Meet Stashes rectangle die and I cut that down with a hillside border. For this one, I added a slider channel just using a slider channel die, which you can see there is that hole. And I'm thinking that this panel will kind of go on the front of my card and act as the sliding channel for the cat. So again, I'm just taking the two different shades of green and kind of blending over the stencil, and then as soon as I'm done one row, I move the stencil up a little bit to create that next layer of grass. I'm kind of trying to alternate where I put the dark and the light, so I'm putting the dark in patches and the light in patches and keeping them a little bit different so that you kind of get this patchy effect. The cool thing about these stencils is that they have grid lines on them, so it makes it really easy to line up on your paper below because you can just kind of check to see if the grid line is aligned with the paper and you know that the stencil is straight. As I do this ink blending, I'm also just kind of holding down the stencil on top of the paper. You could also tape it to make sure that it really sticks down, but because I was kind of moving it so often and doing it so many times in a row, I just figured I would hold it down and that would be good enough. So the next step is to stamp out the sentiment. So I took out the sentiment from the My BFF stamp set, which is "Thanks for being a great friend." And I knew I wanted to stamp it kind of aligning with that hillside border effect, kind of curved. So I took my piece of acetate that fits right in that mini Misty, and I just used that to kind of have the sentiment stick down onto it and stay curved so that I could stamp it out and it would be nice and curved and go along that hillside, which I think is really nice. I just used some Versamark black ink for that as well. So I've gone ahead and glued down the cloud piece and the background hill piece onto just a white card base. And now it's time to adhere the front hill piece, which again is going to house my slider channel. So I just put a few pieces of foam to really give it some nice elevation, which is really needed for the slider. So whenever you're making a slider channel, you want to give your slider piece dimension with foam. And now I'm just lining that piece up onto the bottom of my card, and I made sure to put my dime in there so that it's ready to go for the slider. I don't have to squeeze it in after. So I just kind of put it where I knew it should be, and then I placed that piece of foam right on top. Next, I just took out a slider element. This is one from My Favorite Things, and it's basically just a little piece of plastic. And I'm adhering some double-sided tape onto either side. And then when I've done that, I can pull off the release paper from the double-sided tape and stick it right down onto that dime. Then I can pull off the release paper from the top and stick down my cute little image of the cat in the wagon onto that. And that way everything is stuck together nicely and the cat can now slide in its little slider channel, which is super fun. To finish up this card, I basically just adhered all the rest of those images that I had stamped and colored and cut out, kind of just along the whole scene. So I've mostly just used liquid glue to stick them down. For this tree, I'm using liquid glue to stick the leaves onto the tree. Right now, I just put a bit of glue onto the branches and then I can stick the leaves down where I want them to be. And then I'm using foam squares to elevate that tree off a little bit, just to give it a little bit of added dimension from the background. The cool thing about this stamp set is it comes with these four almost what look like cloud stamps, and you can definitely use them as clouds, which I do on this card as well, but they can also double as the leaves for the tree. So they're kind of double purpose, which is cool. So you'll see at the end when I show the whole card, where you might have noticed at the beginning when you saw the picture that I use the same stamp as the leaves on the tree and as the clouds in the sky, which is really nice. So I'm just positioning this tree with my tweezers to make sure that it's perfectly lined up, and I can just stick it down to the front of the card. So then I go ahead and stick down all the other images to the card using some liquid glue. And for a final touch, I'm adding a few sequins just scattered all over the card front. So what I normally do when I want to add sequins to a card is I place them all out exactly where I want them, and then I just go through one by one, lift a sequin with my tweezers, put a little dab of liquid glue down where I know it should go, and then just stick the sequin down. The glue that I'm using is Ranger Multi-Medium Matte, which is a super sticky glue, and it's also matte, so it means that if any squeezes out, you end up not really seeing it dries matte, which is really great. So that's the glue that I typically use for sequins. So there you have it, that is the card complete. I love how the sequins really shine when you turn the card in the light, and then you'll see that fun slider element at work with the two cats kind of tossing the cat in the wagon back and forth, which is really fun. So thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video today. If you want to see more on my cards, definitely head over to my Instagram account, which is linked down in the description box below. I'll see you next time. Bye!